Nugget. Hi, baby. Nugget, you're making it so difficult. Also, this lighting, holy crap, I look so pale. I need to go into the sun more. You can definitely tell that I'm just a hermit that never leaves my house. No, I didn't like it. I should have DNF'd it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Rochelle. I read a variety of books and I also have a limb difference. And today what we're gonna go over is my reading month for June. And June was an interesting month. Although I did read quite a few books, and at least the same amount of books that I normally do, it felt like such a difficult reading month and was so slumpy because of the fact that if you were to look at my reading graph and like how many pages I got done, it was really hit and miss. There were some days that I read a bunch, and then there were some days that I only read maybe a page, a paragraph, and then there were other days that, you know, things just seemed perfectly normal. There was no issue whatsoever. So it definitely was all over the map as far as reading. And honestly, I just want to go and say I'm so thankful for audiobooks, because if it wasn't for audiobooks, I would not have finished as many books as I did, because that's how interesting and difficult of a reading month it was. I truly felt like I was in a reading slump, and physical books just were not it for me. Let's go and look at our handy dandy graph on Storygraph. And I read a total of 8 books, so that was 3,568 pages, which honestly, I love looking at the number of pages read, because that's probably what makes me feel very accomplished, especially when I feel like I wasn't very accomplished for that month. And average time to finish a book was 9 days. Usually it takes me maybe 3 to 4 days to finish a book, depending on how much I can't put the book down. So I want to paint a picture for y'all. And then let's see. So digital books, so that would probably be Kindle books. That was around 25% of the books I read. 38% were print, and then 38% were also audiobooks. But there were a few that I also did a tandem read. So I started reading them physically and then switched over to them as an audiobook, just because it was so difficult for me to pick up a physical book. And then the average rating that I had for the month of June was 3.81. So that's not too bad. And honestly, a lot of the books that I did read, I rated over 4 stars. So I did have a pretty good reading month. We're gonna go from lowest to highest for the books that I read. And I feel like that's just a way that works really well here on BookTube. A lot of people seem to like that flow. So I'm just gonna continue going on with that, because I feel like at this point I've been pretty used to it. So the first book we're gonna go with is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. You heard me right, Quicksilver. This has been a very viral book, especially I believe on Book Talk, and I have not really been a romance enjoyer for a long period of time, but recently I have been reading more romance books and I've really been enjoying them. So I've been trying to catch up on a few books to make up for lost time, so I finally decided to pick up Quicksilver. I had credits on Everend, so I was like, you know what, let's go and snag this one up. I'm having a hard time reading physical books anyway, and oh my gosh, I did not like Quicksilver. I at first attributed it to the fact that I was in a reading slump. However, no, I didn't like it. I should have DNF'd it. I rated it 2.5 stars. And this might be controversial. I know a lot of people do really like Quicksilver, but it just wasn't for me. And truthfully, I'm very glad that I discovered that before I did go and pick up a version of the book before the new covers come out and everything. So yeah, I'm sorry. It wasn't really a book for me. I wasn't seeing the appeal between the main 2 characters. Also, the male's name being Kingfisher just felt really weird to me. I just couldn't take it seriously. And then there's also some non-consensual stuff dealing with the infertility stuff that pops up. So yeah, it wasn't a book for me. I'm so sorry. And I hope that doesn't change anyone's opinion on me, but it just wasn't a book I could get into. That could have been different if maybe I read it physically, but I'm not too confident that my opinion would be different depending on the format I consumed that book in. Then moving on to the next book, which is The Living Dead by Daniel Kraus and George A. Romero. I did pick this one up from the month of May. I didn't finish it before the month was over, so that was one of the books that I was working on finishing as quick as I could, and I was listening to this one as an audiobook. I did rate this one 3 stars. I just didn't really enjoy it. I do love zombies, I love apocalyptic settings, I love dystopian books. Those things are all my bread and butter and are some of my favorite books to go and read. However, this one was just such a long, dragging book, and I really didn't enjoy it. If anything, what I've learned from a few of these books that I didn't enjoy for the month of June is that it's so great to go and either use a audiobook credit or picking up the book from the library, which is what I did for The Living Dead. I went and borrowed it through Libby, which I use since I now have a library card, yay! But I listened to this one using my library card, and it was a great lesson that there's just some books I'm really not going to enjoy, so it's better to go and borrow them versus going and picking up my own physical copy that I have on my bookshelf and then I'm stuck with. So that was a great lesson for me. And if you would have seen one of my past reading vlogs, you would have seen that I did go and pick up The Living Dead, and I was so tempted to go and purchase it because I was at a used bookstore. However, I just didn't. But yeah, this book was such a long haul. It was so painful to go and listen to, and I think it was over 30 hours long, I want to say. So it definitely was a long book to go and listen to, and just was not for me. I did not enjoy it at all. Then I had 3 books that I rated 4 stars, so I'm just gonna go and pick them at random. The way I'm listing them isn't going to mean that I think of them any differently. It's just gonna kind of make it easier as I scroll through my story graph to remember all the books that I read. So going off of the first one, it's Blood Moon by Britney S. Lewis. I, of course, said I rated this one 4 stars. I got this one as an ARC, and it was one of my anticipated books for the year of 2025. So for those of you that haven't heard of Blood Moon, the author ended up going and writing a book to basically give redemption to the Black characters that were in some of our favorite TV shows, such as The Vampire Diaries. I've never watched Teen Wolf, but for some reason I want to also say Teen Wolf. Let's also say the originals, stuff like that. So if you watched The Vampire Diaries, you know that Bonnie Bennett doesn't get the best storyline. She always kind of gets the short end of the stick and has just the saddest storyline. She doesn't ever seem to get a win. So this author, she decided to go and write Blood Moon that can basically go and give our favorite Black characters from our favorite TV shows growing up the story that they deserve. So with Blood Moon, our main character, she basically is growing up without her mom. Her mom disappeared at some point, and so she kind of holds this resentment towards her mother. She's trying to make life go by the best that she can, but she's dealing with a lot of trauma, a lot of grief. And then she gets the opportunity to go to this school for a full ride. And she's a little bit confused because she's not quite sure how this happened. She never applied to it, but she's like, you know what? I'll go with the flow. I'll just go and do it. It's a full ride. And when she's there, she ends up going and meeting a couple of different characters, but also seeing these different mysteries that are there at the same time. And there's this love triangle there, but also these hidden secrets of this town and a lot of fantasy lore that some people believe in and some people don't. I did really enjoy this book, and the way the book ended was just the kind of cliffhanger that I love and also kind of hate, because you have to wait for the next book to come out, and I'm not quite sure if there is an anticipated date just yet, but I did really love this book. I love the representation in it, so I would highly recommend you to pick up Blood Moon when it comes out. I believe it comes out in the fall, but I'll try to leave the date of when it releases up here just so that you know when it comes out if you're looking forward to it as well. Then let's move on to Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a book that I've been meaning to read for the longest time. I know a lot of my good friends here on BookTube have read this book and absolutely love it. I've heard that this book is kind of a fever dream and a wild ride. I haven't really read a lot of books that are described as a fever dream, so I was a little bit nervous how I would feel going into this. This was also a book that my fiance picked up for me for Christmas when they did a little advent calendar for me. So I did really want to go and read this, especially knowing that I got it from them as a present. And boy, were people not kidding. This definitely was a fever dream. It was very interesting. It kind of gave me similar vibes to We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer, just with the fact that when you're reading that book, you're trying to figure out these mysteries, and when you reach the end of the book, you jump into a rabbit hole, which is kind of funny because this one is about bunnies, but you jump into a rabbit hole going on Reddit and trying to piece together some things and see if there's any details that other readers read that you might have missed. And so that's why this one gives me very similar vibes to We Used to Live Here. With this one, our main character is kind of a little bit of an outsider. She just has one good friend and then kind of is friends with another person in her class, even though everyone else doesn't really care for them. And then there's this group of people called the Bunnies. And the Bunnies basically go and refer to each other as Bunny. They don't use each other's names that often. And they're very cliquey and almost like a hive mind. Their brains just function all together. And with this book, it kind of gave me similar feelings to The Heathers, as well as Mean Girls, just with that whole clique aspect. As far as that, I don't really know how else to describe this book. It was very weird and interesting. There were some horror aspects, but the end of the book just had me dumbfounded and very much where I'm like, what did I just read? Did I even understand anything that I read after finishing this? So there were definitely a lot of thoughts that I had in it. So ultimately, I do think I enjoyed this book. I did get an arc for We Love You Bunny, so I'm gonna have to read that one here soon because I don't really want to forget what I read in this book, and I feel like if I do forget a lot of this, then probably We Love You Bunny won't make as much sense. Not quite sure, but yeah, I do think this was an interesting book, and I do kind of want to dive more into weird girl lit fic just to kind of get out of my comfort zone and see more of what I'm missing. I like diversifying my bookshelves and trying to read a little bit of everything. So yeah, I think it was an interesting experience, and I can definitely see why a lot of people enjoyed this, but also why a lot of other people didn't, because it is a pretty confusing book, and it is one of those that you do have to pay attention to what you're reading. Last book that I rated 4 stars was King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. This was one that I got as an ARC, and this book did come out at the beginning of June. Now, this book I did start at the beginning of June. I was really hoping to finish reading it before its release date. However, I was back home in South Dakota for a family member's funeral, and I was trying my hardest to read this book, but I just couldn't focus. And this is kind of around the time that reading physically just was not working for me. So I'd pick up this book and I'd maybe get through a paragraph, and that's no discredit to this book, this author, anything like that. It was just, I was really struggling to read at that time. So once I got back to my home in Colorado, I realized that, hey, this book is already released. Maybe there's an audiobook that is out, so I can just go and listen to that instead. And I'm really glad I did. This book was really good, but there are a lot of trigger warnings in it, a lot of heavy themes of grief and kind of like mafia vibes as well in a small town aspect. So definitely go and check out that stuff just to make sure this is something that would be up your alley. This was a little bit more different than anything I've read before. It was a crime thriller, and there were a lot of different aspects with this book that were newer from what I've consumed in the past, and I did really enjoy it. I liked our main character and was always curious where exactly he was gonna make things go. Was he doing things to save his family, or was he doing things to kind of redeem his parents? There were a lot of things where you were kind of curious what exactly his motives were, and his brother was a topic that kind of annoyed me at times. And I feel like sometimes when it comes to books, if a main character has siblings, it's a little bit harder for me to truly understand because I am an only child. Although I try to empathize and sympathize, it's sometimes hard to fully understand someone's motives, especially when they're going out to protect a sibling. So yeah, that's something that I had to put myself in a different headspace for. But I did really like this book. I do want to read more by this author, and I recently saw a little clip from him on his book tour, and it just made me love him even more as someone that hasn't really read a lot of his books but does have quite a few of them on my bookshelf. So yeah, I did like this book. I would recommend it, but like I said earlier, please check your trigger warnings. Then another book I read was Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. I have not read a book by Stephanie Garber, and I know a lot of people have loved the Caraval series. I ended up going and picking this one up at the beginning of the month, and I listened to it as an audiobook while I was traveling from Colorado to South Dakota and vice versa. It was a really good book. I know I'm late to the game when it comes to reading the series, but I did really enjoy it. I loved the world building and kind of the mystical aspects around it. I was very curious with the whole storyline, and it was a book that intrigued me enough that I do want to read the rest of the series. With Caraval, it kind of gave me a lot of the magical and whimsy vibes that I originally had when I was growing up and fell in love with reading. It just gave me a lot of nostalgia for what brought me into loving reading, because our main character, she's always wanted to go to Caraval and writes to, I can't remember what his name is, but basically like the head of Caraval, and she writes to him every single year and never gets a response back until she's basically about to go and get married, and it's an arranged marriage, and she gets a letter back inviting her to go, and she's like, I don't think I can. But she has these dreams of her childhood that she's always wanted to go, and she's just very conflicted with a lot of those things, and just something about it really drew me in because it reminded me so much of my childhood and just loving a lot of the magic that you would read in the stories that you consumed. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but yeah, I really did like Caraval. I do want to read the rest of the books in the series. I'm curious to see where things go. And I do think I'd probably want to re-listen to the book because towards the end of the book, there were a lot of pieces that I just kind of zoned out on. So before I continue the series, I think I'd want to do a reread just to go and make sure nothing happened that I missed out on, so I'm not confused when I continue reading the rest of the series. Then the next one I read was Flawless by Elsie Silver. I actually read this one on my Kindle, and then after realizing like, all right, I think I love this series, or I'm gonna love this series, I had to go and purchase the rest of the books. I am really enjoying romance books again and am having just a fun little time with it. I think just being in the reading slumps that I've been in for the past couple of months, diving out of my comfort zone and into different genres that I don't normally consume has really made me enjoy those different genres even more. So this one, we're dealing with kind of this enemies to lovers but then friends to lovers type of situation, and our main male character is kind of a little bit of a grump. He's had this whole persona that has been fabricated because of the media, and he doesn't really do anything to change those perceptions of him. And so his career's kind of falling flat and is at a danger of him losing a lot of his sponsors. So then enter in Summer, who is our female main character. Her dad decides that she's going to go and be in charge of Rhett and be his manager and hopefully help him clear up his whole bad image and maintain and keep a hold of the sponsors that he's had. So Rhett is kind of not too happy about this whole situation and is not the kindest to Summer in the beginning, but things slowly unfurl and I was loving every minute of it. I didn't actually realize how thick the book was until I purchased it physically, but it seems like a lot of the other books in the series are also pretty big, but so many people I know love this series so much. I've had a few of my booktube friends also go and say, hey, there's some books that are so good in the series and then there's a few that are a little bit slower, but honestly I'm excited to read every single one of them and see what my thoughts are. But I'm absolutely loving it. I'm hoping I can fit in another one of the books in the series this month, but we shall see because things are a little bit jam-packed. And then last book we have for this is Night in the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I will have more thoughts on this in my June reading vlog video, but Basically, I absolutely love this book. I rated it 4.5 stars. The beginning of it, I was a little bit hesitant and worried. There was a lot of world building and magic system, and it just took a bit for me because I was getting right out of my reading slump. So my brain was taking a little bit to boot back up and get into fantasy books. The beginning was a bit of a slog for me. I feel like it didn't really pick up until around page 150 or so. And then after that, I was hooked. I couldn't put the book down. I kept thinking about it. There were moments that I was kicking my feet and giggling. I loved both of our main characters in this book, and then also the gargoyle that is in this book as well. I was so hesitant on my thoughts with the gargoyle. I do love animal companions in books, but when they talk, it's kind of a hit or miss for me. There's a fine line where sometimes it can be overdone and sometimes it's just right. So with the gargoyle at first, I was like, oh, this is kind of leaning over too much. I don't think I like this gargoyle. This could be the thing that makes reading this book difficult for me. And I was wrong. I absolutely love the gargoyle. The gargoyle needs to be protected at all costs. And when we learn some more backstory with that character, it was a lot. So yeah, I know a lot of people are ranting and raving about this book, and you know, I'm now a part of the people that are doing the same thing. I'm no longer experiencing FOMO for the fact that I didn't read this book. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm wishing that I read this before I filmed my mid-year freakout tag, but I did mention that this was a book that I really wanted to read, so technically it was mentioned. But yeah, I absolutely love this. Highly, highly recommend. And if you're like me and you're kind of struggling in the beginning to get through the world building and the magic system, just hang on, keep riding it out. I promise it will get better and you will enjoy this book, because that was the situation that I went through as well. Those are all the books that I read for the month of June. Like I said, it was not a bad reading month as far as completing books and finishing books. I did finish 8 books and I'm grateful for that. But I just wish that it would have been a little bit of a smoother journey, at least finishing and getting through books, because that was the part that was the hardest for me. I just couldn't consistently read a book every single day. If you got to this point in the video, I think if anything, let's go and leave like a castle emote or maybe a moth emote. I know for sure there's a castle emote. I don't know if there's a moth. Just for Night in the Moth, if you got this far in the video and you don't know what to comment, just go and leave one of those. And I'm also curious, what was your favorite book that you read for the month of June? Did you also deal with a reading slump like I did? I know there's so many people that were struggling to read books in the month of June, so I think it was kind of something that was across the board for a lot of us. And as always, I want to remind y'all that you're worthy and capable of amazing things. Thank you so, so much for being here and watching this video, and I can't wait to talk to you in the next one. Bye. Oh my gosh, she's being a little gremlin. The least you could do is like be inside of the camera, you know? No? She's like, no, you're asking too much. I'm out of here. There's so much hair flying everywhere. She's having her booty in the camera and everything. Oh my gosh.